I think that most of you know that I was a naturalist for over 30 years with the East Bay Regional Park District. I worked at the Tilden Nature Area at Tilden Regional Park in the Berkeley Hills, and I was known as Ranger Linda, which I think was like my favorite job title of all. So I want to share with you a story of something that really happened there. But we begin with a short Chinese folk tale, and forgive my pronunciation. 很久很久以前, long, long ago in China, there lived a Buddhist monk, and he traveled from temple to temple throughout the country. One evening, his travels took him into a forest where he came upon a small wild pig that had been captured in a hunter's trap. The pig was squealing and squealing with fear. Now, the monk, feeling compassion for the pig, released it from the trap. But according to the laws of the time, he was guilty of theft. But when the matter was brought before the Buddha considered the situation. And he said that the monk was not guilty of theft, for he had acted out of compassion for the pig in releasing it. And that simple act of releasing that pig so that it would not be eaten became known as a practice in Buddhism called Feng Sheng, Feng Sheng, or live release. And that practice was handed down for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Now, fast forward about 2,000 years. It was 5 minutes until closing time at the Nature Center. It was a Saturday in February, and the weather had actually been really nice, so it had lots of visitors. And I'd done nature programs, we did snake talks, puppet shows, tours of the little farm. We were ready for the day to be over. So we announced that we'd be closing the building shortly. Then, from the outside, a visitor comes rushing in, rather out of breath. And he comes over to me and he says, "There's a big group of Asian Americans that are walking down toward Jewel Lake." Okay, I thought, that's nice. And they're carrying these cardboard boxes. Oh, I thought, full of bullfrogs. Oh no, I thought. And they're going to release them. Oh no, I thought. So I thanked the visitor. I asked someone else on staff to finish closing up the building. And then Eveline, one of our college students, our interpretive student aides, and I ran out the back door, jumped into a park truck, and started driving down to Jewel Lake as quickly as we could, hoping we would get there in time. Well, you see, Jewel Lake, even though it's man made, was created in the 1930s, and since then had become really quite naturalized. It was a beautiful little lake, just ringed by cattails, and had willows and alders and lots of wildlife. You know, there were red-winged blackbirds that nested there, kingfishers, all kinds of fish, and most importantly, our little native frog. I think it's now called the Sierra tree frog. Some people call it a forest frog. It's a really small little frog like this, but it has a big voice. And in the springtime, you'll hear the males calling back, "Ribbit, ribbit, 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 ribbit." It's the only frog that has that truly ribbit sound. Well, we get to the lake, park the truck, walk across over to the lake, and sure enough, there are quite a few Asian Americans that are kind of standing around the edge of the lake. And they're singing and they're chanting and they're looking so happy at all these bullfrogs that are jumping around their feet and swimming away across the lake. Um, who's in charge here? I asked, and a middle-aged man stepped forward. I guess I am. Why? I don't suppose you know that bullfrogs are not native to California. And when you release them in a habitat like this, they can completely wipe out our native population. You see, bullfrogs can get to be as large as dinner plates, and they will eat anything that they can get their mouths around. Oh, no, 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 we didn't know. You see, we belong to a Buddhist church in Oakland, and we went to Oakland Chinatown, and we bought up as many bullfrogs as our donations would allow. And then, we brought them here to release. You see, they were practicing Feng Sheng, live release. Um, how many bullfrogs do you think you bought? Uh, we bought about 200 bullfrogs. Oh, I thought. But we won't release the turtles then. Turtles? What turtles? Apparently, they had also bought a box full of turtles. Well, if we can't release the turtles here, where can we release them? Can we release them at Lake Merritt? I had to explain to them that Lake Merritt, the water in Lake Merritt, Lake Merritt is a really large lake in the middle of downtown Oakland. But the water in Lake Merritt comes from the Oakland estuary, which is connected to San Francisco Bay, which is connected to the Pacific Ocean. So the water in Lake Merritt comes from the Pacific Ocean, the bay, the estuary to the lake. And so it's not completely fresh water. It's a combination of fresh water and salt water. And I told them, if you release those turtles that you bought, which are freshwater turtles, you release them into Lake Merritt, they will die a really horrible death. Well, if we can't release turtles or bullfrogs, what can we release? Can we release fish? No, I said, you're not going to find any fish that are native to these lakes. So after some discussion, the only thing I could really think of that they could release for feng sheng and not, destroy the environment would be perhaps crickets. They'd be a good food for the wildlife here. So they agreed to take their turtles and leave the park. I gave them a name of a woman who could probably find homes for all their turtles. And then Eveline and I, looking down at all these frogs, she noticed that some of them were kind of jumping sort of sideways and they're on their backs. And she went over and she just grabbed a couple, really easily. So we decided that if we were going to have any luck at all of recapturing some of these 200 bullfrogs, we would have to try and capture them that night. We're afraid if we waited till the next day, they would have revived and be much harder to catch. Well, luckily, Eveline's family lived about 10 minutes away from the park and they owned two kayaks. So she took the park truck and zoomed off to get the kayaks. I went back to the office. I called my family to tell them what was going on. And David, my husband at the time, turned to our two boys, Sterling and Kenji, who I think were about 7 and 3 at the time. He said, "Boys, do you want to go help your mom catch bullfrogs?" "Yeah," they said. So they came down as well. I think we spent about 5 hours on that little lake that night capturing bullfrogs. Eveline and Athena, the two student aides, were in the kayaks. They were each paddling the kayaks very slowly around the edge of the lake. Right? They were each holding flashlights in their teeth. And then when the flashlights would shine on the bullfrog's eyes, you'd hold the flashlight really steadily on their eyes, and it does make the bullfrogs just be very still. It kind of freaks them out, I guess. Stuns them. So then, holding the flashlight, they'd put down the paddle. They would pick up a long handled net and scoop the bullfrog out of the water. Then, reaching down into the net, they'd get the bullfrog out and they would stuff the bullfrog into some trash bags that were down by their feet inside the kayak. And this worked great until there got to be so many bullfrogs in there. Some of them got out, and I can hear them going, oh, 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 as they're trying to recapture their bullfrogs. Well, the two boys and I were in a little flat bottom rowboat, and their dad was rowing us very quietly around the lake. The two boys had big flashlights they're using, and I had the long handled net. Well, as I said, we spent about 5 hours that night. And around midnight, we were good and tired. So we came back in, put all the bullfrogs in these big white plastic containers, with lids, right? We had recaptured 98 of the 200 bullfrogs. We put the containers in a small storage room at the nature center. But the bullfrogs had hopped so vigorously over the course of the night, they popped the lids off. And so the next morning, when we came in and opened the door to the storage room, there were all the 98 bullfrogs jumping all over again. So we had to recapture them, put the lids on more tightly, and we gave the bullfrogs to the East Bay Vivarium, the business in Berkeley that raises and sells reptiles and amphibians, and they were really happy to have these bullfrogs. But they knew they couldn't resell them, but they were raising a large South American snake, and this snake would eat the bullfrogs because there's not that many things that can handle an adult bullfrog. They were going to freeze the bullfrogs, since there's so many of them, which was really a kind way to kill them because the bullfrogs just kind of go to sleep and never wake up. And then slowly they would thaw out the bullfrogs and feed them to the snake as needed. Well, the next year, about this time, as Chinese New Year's was approaching, we were a little worried that this might happen again. So we had some signs created that said, Happy Chinese New Year. While we understand the practice of feng shui, the release of any animals into the regional parks is strictly prohibited. And it seemed to work. But it took us 10 years, 10 years to rid the nature area of those Chinese New Year's bullfrogs and all their offspring. It just meant every year going out, and anytime we'd see a bullfrog, we'd have to capture it, bring it in, freeze it. We'd capture their tadpoles, get rid of those from the pond. Now, how did we know that after 10 years we actually succeeded in getting rid of the bullfrogs? Well, up to that point in the springtime, if you would walk down to the lake or to the ponds, you would hear barump, 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 which was the bullfrog calling. But after that point, you could walk down to the lake or the ponds and you would only hear ribbit, 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 ribbit. And that is all. Thank you.